There exists a certain understanding, a method whispered but never fully voiced. Neville Goddard danced around it for years, planting seeds through parables and metaphors, yet he withheld the essence, until the end, until the moment when nothing remained but the raw, unfiltered truth. And what he left behind wasn't a technique, it wasn't a ritual, it wasn't a task to complete, it was a realization. One so precise, so piercing, that it didn't teach you what to do, it changed who you are. And once it lands and once it roots itself in your awareness, your entire world begins to realign, without effort, without resistance. So if you've ever whispered, "Why isn't this working?" If you've repeated words, closed your eyes and waited for change, this may be the final message you ever need to hear. Not because it's more powerful, but because it unmasks the one thing you've been overlooking, the identity from which you speak. In his final days, Neville gave a talk titled, "God and I Are One." It was different. The metaphors were gone, the veil lifted. There was no need to cloak truth in poetry anymore. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He wasn't shielding anyone from shock. He simply told the truth, plainly. He said, "The I am in you is God," not as an allegory, not as artistic language, as an undeniable eternal fact. And that one statement tore through centuries of programming. Some turned away, others denied it. Most didn't understand. But a rare few, listened. And in the silence that followed, something clicked. Because for ages, we've been taught to look outside of ourselves, to kneel, to plead, to search the skies for mercy. But Neville pointed inward, not metaphorically, literally. The force you've prayed to, begged to, cried out for, was never somewhere else. It was always the awareness within, and manifestation doesn't begin with desire, it begins with identity. And this is the fracture point, the place where most people stumble. You're not sending a message out into some distant galaxy, you're not requesting approval from a higher power. You are speaking as the creative force itself. So when you say, "I am broke," you're not reporting your situation. You are commanding it into being. When you say, "I am unlucky," you are not venting. You are authoring your reality. Because the world does not respond to what you want. It reflects who you claim to be. That's the axis. That's the moment everything pivots. Neville once wrote, "To be aware of poverty while asking for wealth is to receive only what you are aware of, lack." This is why prayers seem to fail. This is why rituals go dry. You're saying the words, but the voice within still believes it's lacking. You are scripting abundance from a mindset welded to scarcity. But if the awareness within you is the divine, then you are not asking for change, you are declaring it. And what follows? "I am" becomes flesh. Let's shift now, slowly, intentionally. Close your eyes if you wish. Take one long inhale. Hold, and exhale slower than you think you need to. And now, gently say, aloud or silently, "I am financially secure." Let it rise through you. Let it unfold, not as a chant, but as a recognition. You're not shouting into the void. You're returning to a forgotten truth. You're not convincing the universe. You're reminding yourself of what you've always carried. "I am financially secure." Do you feel the difference between that and "I wish I had more money"? Between "I hope things turn around" and "I already am"? This isn't semantics. This is structure, foundation, origin. When you're ready, write it down. Not for attention, not for display, but to mark the moment, Kat, when the old story began to fall away. I am financially secure, not to impress, to anchor. Because here is the shift. You are no longer affirming, you are aligning. And from here, we go deeper. You've spoken it. Now, you must feel it, not with passion, not with desperation, but with stillness. This is where the second revelation begins, the power of silent presence. Find a place where the noise ends. No background music, no guided meditations, no distractions. Sit, let your spine lengthen, let your shoulders drop, let the breath become your guide. And say, nothing but this. I am, not I am rich, not I am abundant, just the root, the origin, the seed I am. Let it reverberate through you like a sacred echo. No reaching, no proving, no requesting, just being. In that stillness, in that simplicity, you return to the place where the veil thins, where the self and the source dissolve into one awareness. Neville called this the cornerstone of creation. Christ himself used these two words, I am, to reveal union with the divine. And now, so do you. You are not asking. You are remembering. And in that remembrance there is no time, no waiting, no delay. There is only now. This is the turning point most people skip. They want tools, steps, checklists. But the real secret is this. When you say, I am, you activate the engine of creation, and so we arrive at Revelation 3, attach only truth to I am. Now that you've tasted stillness, now that you've sensed the divine echo behind your breath, your words carry more weight. You begin to understand these two syllables, I am, are not yours alone. They are sacred. They are the very breath of the Creator. You stop saying, I want to be free, because want implies lack. Want pushes fulfillment into the future. But God does not want. God declares, so you say, I am financially secure, not because your reality changed, but because your identity did. You don't say, I hope money finds me. Hope is gentle, but hope is also unstable. It lives in maybe. You say, I am abundance, because in the unseen world there is no someday, only now. And you stop saying, I wish someone would support me. That is the language of exile, the words of someone who still believes God is elsewhere. No, you say, I am supported, because support isn't something you chase. It's something you embody. Here's the part almost no one teaches. You do not speak these truths to make them real. You speak them because in the realm of the spirit, they already are. And the outer world, the reflection, the mirror, simply rearranges to catch up. You're not fighting for results. You're embodying reality. Neville taught, assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled in stillness, and your assumption will crystallize into fact. So when you speak after I am, you are not describing what is. You are declaring what is now true. Let your words carry authority. Let them be carved from reverence. Speak not from your wounds. Speak from your essence, because I am is not a phrase, it is a doorway. Now that you've whispered the sacred phrase, now that you've sat in stillness with I am, there's only one thing left to do. Walk as if God just spoke through you, because in truth, that's exactly what happened. That whisper wasn't wishful thinking. It wasn't motivational fluff. It was the original voice, the creative spark that once said, let there be light, now speaking through your breath. And when the divine speaks, the only thing left for you to do is move in harmony with it. Neville once said, God became man so that man might become God. This was never about arrogance, never about ego. It's not about feeling superior. It's about waking up to the realization that every step you take, every glance, every word can be an extension of that silent awareness. So today you walk not with pride but with quiet certainty, not because everything looks different, but because you are different. You've stopped hoping. You've started embodying. When you enter a space, enter it as someone who already holds what others are chasing. When you open your bank app, don't do it with tension. Do it with trust, not because the number changed, but because your relationship with it did. This is not about pretending. This is about remembering. This is not about faking a state. It's about staying loyal to the one that already exists within you. Faith, as Neville described it, is loyalty to the unseen reality. So today's practice is not about repetition. It's not about intensity. It's not about forcing results. It's about this. Become the person who already has what they once hoped for. That doesn't mean doubt won't whisper. It doesn't mean old thoughts won't return. You may still feel that familiar pull to check, to measure, to doubt, but this time, you don't spiral, you don't panic, you don't react, you return. Back to I am, back to the center, back to the stillness, back to the quiet certainty that was always waiting for you. When you pay a bill, do it with ease, not because of the amount, but because of your identity. When you walk outside, move like someone already chosen. already affirmed. When you speak to others, you're not performing. You're bringing presence. You don't chase confirmation anymore. You are the confirmation. And that's how the external world begins to reshape. Not when you shout louder, not when you grip tighter, but when your inner frequency becomes so consistent, the material world has no choice but to reflect it. Because this is the true law, the one behind every ritual, every technique, every prayer. The outer always mirrors the inner. Now we arrive at Revelation 4. Let the world catch up to your new identity. You've declared it, you've felt it, you've remembered. Now, you allow. Here's what few will ever tell you. The moment you adopt a new inner state, the instant you assume a new identity, it becomes real. Not when it shows up, not when others notice, but when you claim it in silence. The outer world may take time. It may move slowly like a tide that hasn't quite reached the shore. Your phone might ring with the same problems. The bills might still arrive. The digits in your account might still whisper fear. But don't believe the echo. What you're seeing is residue. Leftovers from the former self. Neville called this the bridge of incidents, a chain of natural events that unfolds after a new seed is planted. And here is your only role. Do not dig up what you've planted. Do not chase after signs. Do not break your stillness to go check if it's working, because it is. You've already shifted, and the mirror of life just hasn't caught up yet. You see, mirrors have a delay. You move first. The reflection follows. So keep moving, keep living, keep breathing as the version of yourself who already has it. Not to manipulate reality, but because you've already become it. And when something small happens, a refund, a call, a new opportunity, don't say maybe it's working. Say, of course, this is who I am now. This is no longer a test. This is life. This is your baseline. Your calm? That's power. Your stillness? That's strength. And the self that knows, truly knows, it doesn't flinch while waiting, because the knowing is already enough. The wealth is already in motion. The abundance is already forming shape. You just haven't caught up to it yet. So let it unfold. Let reality bend in its own rhythm. Your task now is far simpler than you think. Be the version of you who no longer hopes. Be the one who no longer observes. Be the one who no longer wishes. Be the one who already is. And now comes the part most people skip, the sacred aftermath of awakening. Silence. Not because you're uncertain, but because now, you know, you've crossed into a truth most never reach, that desire is not fulfilled by force, but by assumption, and not assumption someday. Assumption now, in this breath, in this moment. You said the words, I am financially secure. You didn't say it as a request. You didn't whisper it in desperation. You said it because that is now who you are. And this feeling, this identity, is what was missing all along. So now let time take its course. Let the world align. But you stay loyal, because loyalty, not effort, is what gives birth to change. Faith is not noise. It is quiet devotion to what you can't yet see. It doesn't beg. It doesn't wait for evidence. It walks, steady, silent, already blessed. You don't need more signs. You don't need to check again. You don't need to beg the universe for another confirmation. Why? Because you've already spoken the word. And when it's spoken from identity, it becomes flesh. You may be tempted tomorrow, maybe next week, to return to the old voice, the one that doubts, the one that checks, the one that asks again and again, did it work? But you've moved. You don't live there anymore. You've stepped into something deeper, something quieter, something immovable. And that is not a technique. That is a return to what has always been true, to the divine within, to the source behind your eyes, to the truth that sat quietly, waiting to be chosen. And now, finally, you've chosen it. So from this point forward, you don't wait for wealth, you walk in it. You don't ask for safety, you embody it, because you've declared, I am financially secure, and what you are must be reflected, not through force, not through striving, but through law. So breathe it in again. Let it settle into your bones. Let it root into your ordinary moments. Let it become so natural that even silence feels like confirmation. And if you ever forget, return. Not to this message. Not to the technique. Not even to the words. Return to yourself, because nothing has changed and accept everything. You are not on your way. You are not halfway there. You are not in the process. You are the origin, the center, the cause, and the life around you is just the echo. Let it echo, let it unfold, let it arrive. Unfold. Let it. There's a hidden threshold in the journey of transformation, a line most people never recognize, let alone cross. It's not dramatic. It's not marked by fireworks or divine voices. It's quiet, subtle, almost invisible. It's the moment when this truth stops feeling like a miracle and starts feeling like your new normal. That's the moment real power begins. Not when you feel elated for 5 minutes after a meditation, not when you finish another round of affirmations, but when the awareness settles into your bones, when you carry it with you into the mundane parts of life without trying, without remembering, without effort, when it becomes who you are. So let's talk about what that actually looks like. It means that when you're standing in line at the store, you're not just another person in the crowd. You're a living vibration of wealth and certainty, not because of what you wear or what you say, but because of what you radiate. When you check the mailbox and see a bill, the old reflex would have panicked. Now you breathe, you smile, even slightly, not because the bill excites you, but because you know who you are now, and that changes how you receive everything. When your phone buzzes with another expense, your body doesn't tighten. You don't flinch. You receive it with calm, because you trust that something greater is always flowing toward you, even when it's not yet visible. This is the difference between pretending and becoming. Pretending says, let me act like I have faith so I can prove it to myself. Becoming says, this is simply who I am now. You receive money with stillness, not grasping. You lose money with peace, not fear. Why? Because money is no longer your source. Identity is. You're no longer tethered to the external world for your sense of stability. That's why Neville never obsessed over the object of desire. He always pointed to the inner shift, because when the inner reality becomes stable, the external must conform. And if it doesn't appear to conform immediately, you don't panic, you don't reset, you remain. Because the real manifestation isn't about getting the thing. It's about no longer being the version of you that lacked it. This is the shift. And now we reach Revelation 5. Protect nothing. Embody everything. You don't have to grip your new identity like a lifeline. You don't have to tense up hoping nothing shakes you out of it. You relax into it. You live inside it. Because now, it's not something you're trying to hold. It's something you are. When you speak, the words no longer sound like wishes, they sound like laws, not because you're forcing them, but because they come from such rooted awareness that they carry weight without volume. So yes, there will be moments when the old thoughts knock. They'll try to trick you. They'll say, nothing changed. See? You're still in the same place. You've been saying I ams, where's the proof? But those are ghosts, flickers of a former self trying to resurrect. And you don't fight ghosts, you simply don't feed them, you don't argue with them, you outgrow them, you walk through the shadow untouched. Because you've stopped identifying with the voice that needs proof. You've merged with the one that creates it. That's why you no longer repeat affirmations like a spell. You let your state speak for you. When you walk into a room, people feel something, even if they don't know what it is. That's the quiet authority of identity. You don't seek validation. You carry confirmation. You're no longer someone who's trying to manifest wealth. You're someone through whom wealth expresses itself, naturally, effortlessly, because wealth isn't a thing. It's a frequency, a knowing, a presence, and you've returned to it, you've claimed it, you've become it, and as you live in this state, your life starts to echo it back. Not through magic, but through resonance. You begin to attract differently. Opportunities come with less effort. People respond with more trust. Ideas arrive with clarity and precision. It's not because the universe finally said yes. It's because your state aligned with what you were asking for all along. You finally said yes to yourself, This is the law. Not law in the sense of rule or punishment, but law in the sense of gravity, impersonal, precise, absolute. And this law says what you are within, you will become without. So here's what you do next. You stop chasing, you stop measuring, you stop waiting, and instead, you normalize. Make this your baseline, your default. So normal, so natural, that you forget there was ever a version of you who didn't know this. When someone asks how things are going, you don't launch into a story about struggle. You simply say they're aligning. Because you're no longer narrating problems, you're narrating peace. You don't talk about lack. You don't even need to talk about money. You live as if money were just the smallest part of your security, because now it is. You've returned to the source. You're not asking anymore. You're being, and in that being, you've discovered the forgotten truth. Your reality doesn't begin outside you, it begins with I am. And what follows those words becomes your life. So say it again now, but softer, slower, not as a command, as a memory. I am financially secure. Let it breathe. Let it stretch across your chest like sunlight. Let it vibrate in the silence. That follows. You don't have to say it 100 times, once is enough, when it's said with knowing, because here's the paradox. The less you try to make it happen, the faster it unfolds, not because you gave up, but because you stopped interrupting the process with doubt. You stopped planting and digging up the seed every day to see if it grew. You trusted the soil. You trusted the law. You trusted yourself. So, now you can let go. You don't need to hold the state so tightly. It holds you. You don't need to monitor your thoughts every second. They self-correct when your identity is rooted. This is the true meaning of effortless, not that nothing happens, but that it flows without friction. It moves without resistance, and now so do you. You've stepped beyond the technique, beyond the affirmation, beyond the ritual. You've arrived at the origin, the place where words become worlds, where stillness becomes structure, where identity becomes manifestation. And now, you rest here, not passively, not waiting, but with sacred anticipation, knowing that the life forming around you is just a reflection of the truth you dared to claim. You're not becoming anymore. You are. You're not pursuing anymore. You've remembered, and now the world has no choice but to rearrange, because the cause has changed, and when the cause shifts, the effect must obey. So don't watch the scoreboard, don't count the signs, don't keep checking. Just stay loyal, not obsessed, not rigid, just faithful, to the quiet certainty that says, I am financially secure. And from that statement, that silent vow, everything flows. You've walked through the threshold. You've crossed the invisible line, not the one the world shows you, but the one that separates longing from embodiment. Now, you're no longer someone chasing light. You are the light. You don't wish for change. You anchor it. You don't seek signs. You become the signal. But there's one final phase, the most overlooked, the most misunderstood. Integration. When you've declared the truth, when you've remembered your name, when I am has become your identity, you don't need fireworks. You don't need applause, you need quiet. Because the final shift doesn't happen in sound, it happens in silence. It's in the way you open the fridge, the way you walk down the hallway, the way you brush your teeth at night, the sacred lives in the ordinary. And now that you know who you are, those small moments carry the power of the universe. Neville never said, scream your desire until it comes. He said, live from the end. That doesn't mean act it out. It means let your inner world reflect what would be true if it had already happened. And here's the twist. It has. Not because the money has arrived yet, but because the identity already did. That's the secret most miss. They think manifestation is about waiting. But it's not. It's about catching up to the version of you who isn't waiting anymore. So what does that version do? He doesn't obsess over timelines. She doesn't refresh the account 5 times a day. They don't recite affirmations to force reality into shape. They move through the world as someone who's already been answered, who no longer begs, who no longer doubts. And when something shifts, a refund appears, an unexpected opportunity lands, a number on a screen increases. You don't gasp. You don't act surprised. You nod because of course it came. It was already yours. It was simply catching up. This is the power of embodiment. When the external becomes irrelevant to your internal stability, when your identity stops needing to be validated, when your faith becomes so natural, you forget it's faith at all. It just feels like presence, like breath, like home. Let's pause again, let the words drop away, no technique, no pressure, just stillness. Close your eyes if you want. Place a hand over your chest. Feel that rhythm, steady, quiet, ancient. That's the signal of life. That's the pulse of I am, not a phrase, a frequency. And in that space you don't need to speak, because who you are speaks louder than any affirmation ever could. This is where identity becomes vibration, where vibration becomes reality. Now, let's answer the final question. How do I stay here? The answer: you don't stay, you simply return. Whenever doubt whispers, return. Whenever fear taps your shoulder, and return. Whenever the world seems louder than your knowing, return. Not by force, not through willpower, but through remembrance. This is not a battle. This is a homecoming. You will forget. That's okay. You will slip. That's human. But every time you do, you get to choose again. And each time you choose, the path becomes easier. You're not building a fortress. You're cultivating a field, soft, sacred, alive. And the harvest comes not from control, but from consistency. That's why we plant the same seed every morning. I am financially secure. We don't shout it, we don't plead with it. We just breathe it into the soil of our life again and again until it's no longer a seed, until it becomes the air we move through, until it becomes our new normal. Not by magic, by resonance. Because when you live in alignment with your true nature, the world has no choice but to shape itself around you. You are not waiting on reality. Reality is adjusting to you. This is what Neville meant when he said, "Change your conception of yourself, and you will automatically change the outer world." He didn't mean to trick your mind. He meant, when you become something within, you create something without trying. So from this day forward, make a vow. Let the external world take its time. Let numbers take a while to shift. Let people doubt you. But do not let any of it pull you back into who you no longer are. You are not becoming. You are, and what you are will be seen, not instantly, not always loudly, but undeniably. Your work now is not work. It's permission. Permission to relax into what's already been declared. Permission to stop seeking. Permission to stop doubting. Permission to live like someone who doesn't need permission. This is freedom, not financial freedom as a number, but existential freedom, knowing you are no longer ruled by the illusion of delay. You've stepped out of time. You're no longer waiting for wealth to arrive. You're walking as wealth, and now every interaction, every thought, every movement carries that frequency. You don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to prove your progress. You simply walk as the embodiment of truth. And when people ask you, "How did you manifest this?" you won't say, "I did steps 1 through 5. You'll say, "I remembered who I was." That's it. You remembered that I am is not a technique. It's a name, a source, a throne. And now, you sit on it. So here's how we end. Not with a bang, not with a declaration, but with a return. To breath, to stillness, to being. Place your hands in your lap. Let your jaw unclench. Let your shoulders soften. Let the mind fall silent. And in the quiet, speak once more. I am financially secure. Say it as if you've always known, as if it's not new but ancient, because it is. It has waited for you, hidden beneath every fear, every setback, every question, and now you've uncovered it. You've said the name, you've claimed the identity, and the law of life, the echo of the universe, is already responding. Not because you begged, but because you remembered. You remembered the truth most never find, that you don't manifest by force. You manifest by resonance, by alignment, by identity, and what you are, the world will eventually reflect. So now there is nothing left to do. Just let it unfold. Let the life around you reassemble. Let the numbers rearrange. Let the unexpected arrive. But let none of it shake who you now are. You don't need to stay. High vibe. You don't need to obsess over your thoughts. You don't need to repeat anything unless you want to, because the state holds itself, and when it fades, you don't panic. You return, gently, easily, lovingly, because this is not something you do, it's something you are. You are the cause, everything else is the ripple. So as this message fades, let the silence speak louder than the words. Let it wash over you like a truth remembered. Let it settle, let it claim you. And before you go, say it one final time. I am financially secure, not to attract it, not to impress anyone, but to seal it, to write it across the inner walls of your life, because from this point forward, you are no longer seeking, you are no longer becoming, you are simply being, and that is enough.